Welcome to episode 6 of the How'd You Start podcast. I'm Nick Harrison. I'm here sitting down with Richie. Thanks for sitting down with me again. What's the name? What's your company?
Company is Wicked Cowboy Co.
Okay. How'd you start? How'd you come up with the name?
So we came up with the business idea, what we wanted to do, where we wanted to do it, all before we even came up with a name. And then my wife, who's the creative brains behind everything, I'm definitely not. She came up with a list of names, and then the first thing we really did was, all right, which ones do we both like? So that cut out half of them probably. And then we, the other names that we liked, the first thing we really did was, went on the internet, try to see, you don't want to name, your company something that's already out there, especially if it's in the same sort of market as you guys are in. And so that canceled out a bunch of other names. And for some reason, Wicked Cowboy, we were starting a men's and women's Western, off the edge, type of brand. That's what we've always wanted to do. So we obviously thought cowboy would be, a good fit for that. But at the same time, we wanted something that kind of stood out. So we came up with Wicked Cowboy, just started saying it, started sounding good, started trying to make some logos for it. I think we have a pretty cool logo. And then just kind of put it out there to our friends, say, hey, this is what we're kind of thinking about starting. And everybody was like, man, we love that name. It just sounds different. It sounds like it has a story to tell. And then we kind of ran with it, and it's
just wild enough to be interesting.
Yeah.
It's not bland.
No, it's not bland, but people are like, all right, cowboy, you could think of cowboy. You're going to think of obviously, horses, cowboy hats, people that kind of live their life on the edge. Do things, be at their, go at their own pace and do things that maybe not the norm. But then Wicked would just be like, man, that's pretty badass.
Yeah.
So it kind of came together, and then, now it's so natural. Everybody
knows it. So you said you came up with the idea first. What was the reasoning for trying to come up with an idea in the first place? So had y'all always wanted to start your own business, or what made you want to start something to begin with?
Yeah. So my background is I raced NASCAR modifieds for a lot of years, and I also played hockey through college and stuff. So kind of a weird dynamic. Not a lot of people do one of those two sports and then doing both of them. So from a young age, especially racing wise, I always had a strong sense of marketing. We were a family owned team, which meant that, the money to fund everything didn't come out of our own pocket, like a lot of the guys that we were racing. So we had to market a lot and do a lot of marketing. And, from a young age, I kind of figured out, it's great to have sponsors on the cars and stuff. But a big part of that is you got to wear your brand. You got to wear who supports you. Right. So we always had nice apparel, and I always kind of got into that stuff. And I have a very pretty much, I guess, cowboy style: jeans, boots, hat, and a t-shirt. Right. I could wear the same 5 pairs of pants the rest of my life. Like most of us can. So, I was always very, I guess you could say, bland in that sense, but I had a certain style. And then my wife came from, I met her when she was at UNC Charlotte. And she had a communications background, but she was really into fashion, and she worked at a boutique down on East Boulevard in Charlotte for probably the first 6 months that we dated. And then we would travel a lot. With my job at the time, I was a regional manager, so we go down Charleston, Savannah a lot. And like most women, they want to go shopping, they want to go into boutiques and stuff. And I always told her, I said, you know what? I said, I have no problem going with you, because I know you enjoy this. But there's a couple things that a guy would like when he walks in the store. One would be a bar. Most places aren't going to have that. 2 would be a couch. Some places have that for you. Or 3, which I think would be the best option, would be, how come we can't walk in the store, say we're going to a concert that night, and how come you can't go buy an outfit, and why can't I go buy a hat, a shirt, or whatever it may be? We all could shop at one place.
In the same store. Same
store, same checkout, one and done, walk out, go to the concert, go to the racetrack, go to the rodeo, whatever it may be. So that we always had that concept in our head. And then, life kind of took over. We got married, bought our first house, sold our first house, bought all this land, built our house. So it kind of, I don't want to say got pushed aside, but as we both kind of climbed the corporate ladder, it was always there that, like, listen, we want to do something for ourselves eventually. Hopefully both of us one day, but at least one of us, right? And So in September of 2023, down here in York, South Carolina, they have something called Summerfest. And in York, on Congress Street, there's a big place called Yorkville Marketplace, which is a bunch of different businesses, vendors in one building. And I was just walking down with my dad and grabbed a beer, and we were just walking. And I said, let's go in here. I'm just curious what it takes. Went in there, met with the people who were running it at the time. I said, what does it take to get a space in here? And at first, they were like, well, you got to send in the application. We got to review it. I said, that's fine. And he goes, what's your idea? So I gave him the idea. He goes, what's the name? I said, I don't have a name. I said, I just stopped in. And it went from having to send your application and everything to a 30-minute conversation and being like, all right, let's set up a meeting. I went home, told Carly, my wife, and then from there, we were just like, all right, we got to figure this out.
So you had talked about how you got the name. You had a marketing background. Your wife had communications background and boutique fashion experience. Perfect blend is what you're doing now.
Yeah.
But how did you start in terms of you talked about what kind of apparel you wanted, the blue jeans, cowboy kind of type of apparel?
Big hats too.
But how did you know how to start? How'd you know where to buy it? How'd you know what to put on it? How did you know what, do you buy in bulk 10,000 hats up front, or how did all that start?
So in the beginning, me being a consumer of the product helps, right? So if you like something, you see a lot of it and you consume it, you start to get some type of familiarity with it. So I had that part of it. She had the women's side. So when you look at our business, you walk in our store, you walk in our trailer at rodeos or our website, you got men's and women's. Obviously women wear men's t-shirts, they wear hats just like men do, right? So there is crossover, but she knew the women's side, what, the style was, what would sell. I obviously knew the men's style and I knew the brands. The long-term goal for Wicked Cowboy, and we're starting to see a turn of that, is Wicked Cowboy is a brand. Just like there's other brands out there, like Whiskey Bent, Embry, hats, clothes that we sell now in our retail store, they're all brands. That's what we're going towards. But in the beginning, I'm like, if we're going to have a retail store, we need to have names that people, the kids at the high school or people in the area, they know, they consume, and a place for them to buy it. They can go online and buy it, but if they can walk into our store and see 70 hats on a wall, and actually look at them, try them on and stuff, there's a better chance that they're going to actually buy it. So I knew the brands that we needed to have to start. I wanted to have, obviously our core of our company is the cowboy branded stuff. But at the same time, where we are, this is hunting fishing country, right? So we needed to have those brands as well. And we do now, and we have all the top brands and we're direct with all of them. Each brand I can call someone, speak to them about something.
How did you originally land those brands in? What did it take to get signed up with those brands for you to be a retailer for those brands? Well,
first thing we had to do was, all right, we got to make this business legit, right? Mm-hmm. So I got to get a license with the town of York to have a store in York. I got to get a South Carolina retail license.
Did it originally start as a brick and mortar? So was that the original goal, or did it just start online?
No, so it really started. We opened up November 8th of 2023. Our store did. I don't think our website was really up and running until probably February of 2024.
Okay.
So we were really just brick and mortar, and social media, obviously. She has built our social media channels into good followings and everything. So it was really just brick and mortar to start. So in order to get those brands to sell to us, there's wholesale websites that a lot of these brands are on. So we did a little bit of that, but the ones that I wanted to be direct with right away, was really, some of them was just signing up on their website as a whole, on the wholesale website. And all right, you're approved. Some of them was, we're never going to respond to you. Some of them we had conversations with and we got approved. And then even some of the big ones we have now, it took, a year and a half. And it even took some of the big apparel shows for me to go to and walk right in their booth and say, hey, I've been emailing.
Because I'm assuming some of them have requirements like you have to, or maybe they don't. Do you have to have X amount of square foot in your store that you're going to dedicate to them? Do you have to have a certain amount of inventory that you have to be able to hold for them? Are the requirements as far as that goes?
Every brand's different. Some of them require brick and mortar. Some don't. Most of them do, right? Because they don't want you selling just their stuff on your website too. So a lot of them require brick and mortar. A lot of them require a buy-in order. Some of them could be $1,000. I've talked to some brands that are $5,000, right? That's a lot of inventory that you hope to sell. That's a lot of money up front. So, some of those brands I initially kind of stayed away from, and then now we sell some of them because we've grown. So every brand is different. Some brands really just want to be partners with you. And they're growing. And then now we're kind of in the last month, we're actually now in 2 retail stores in the country. So we're slowly now becoming a brand that people want to put in their stores. So we're doing a lot of things at once. But like I've always told Carly, my wife, I says, I want to grow as fast as possible, but as slow as possible. Obviously that really doesn't make sense when you say it out loud. But we want to be big. But at the same time, I don't want to become too big too fast, that we kind of forget what we're doing. And then, we're kind of doing too much that we're not capable of doing just yet.
How did you, when you first launched the business, made it legit, you were getting the commercial space set up in York. How did you know it was going to work?
You don't.
So how did you make the leap? Because I'm assuming, without getting into actual numbers, that commercial leases are not cheap.
No, so that's the good thing about Yorkville Marketplace in York, South Carolina. If you haven't been, 100% you got to check it out, because you go in there, we're I believe now from a retail standpoint, the biggest space in there. We have 10 by 25 space, which might not sound a lot, but if you look at our store, there's a lot of stuff in there. So when we went in there, the great thing about that place is it's open Wednesday to Sunday. There's a full bar restaurant in there. There's a full cigar lounge in there, jewelry store, you name it. It's all in there. The good thing about it is, though, we don't have to be there. So they have a full-time staff, checkout counter. You can walk around. You can go to the cigar, you go a couple different places, pick out this from here, go into Wicked Cowboy, get a hat, get shirts, get whatever you need, and then go up to the front and just check out.
Because you're in a big marketplace.
You're in a big marketplace, and we don't physically have to be there. I'm there a lot because I enjoy being there, and I like to make sure our stuff keeps stocked and everything. But we don't have the overhead as you would at a standalone brick and mortar. We don't have to pay. We're not going to take out the trash. We have to clean the toilets. We don't have to make sure.
You're renting a booth.
Renting a booth, essentially. But it's not and I try to tell people all this time is, people come in there sometimes like, man, that's not that cheap. I said, yeah, well, this isn't a flea market.
Right.
This is a boutique.
And you're trying to build a brand.
And we're building a brand that now with our trailer and stuff, like last week at the Bucking K Rodeo, we have people coming in there. Some people I've seen 5-6 times. They just keep coming back. Some people have heard about us, seen us on social media, and like, I can't believe you guys are here. And then some people just come for us. They said, no, we weren't coming. Last year, one guy from Mooresville says, nah, we weren't going to come. It's like an hour and 20 minutes away. But then we saw on Instagram that you guys are going to be there. So we made the drive. So that's pretty cool to see.
And that means the brand is working.
The brand's working. And then now the cool thing is, my wife just told me the other day, is that a girlfriend she knows in Texas was like, or actually, I think it might be a family member. She's like, I was in DFW. Boarding a plane, the person in front of me is wearing Wicked Cowboy. Wow. That's pretty cool to hear.
That's cool.
Or if we're out of in town at a restaurant or something and you see our stuff, that's when we know it's starting to get some recognition.
So you started in the marketplace in your physical location. It only started with previous brands? Or what was Wicked Cowboy's first product? So
just hats. I think we just started with hats.
Logo hats?
Logo hats, say Wicked Cowboy on it. A friend of mine here in Clovers that owns an embroidery company, he was making a lot of our stuff to start. And I just put it out there. People bought it. But we were selling at that point, I bet you it was 95.5. 95% other brands, a little bit of Wicked Cowboy. But I knew, you're asking me how do you know it's going to work? I had to lean on known brands, because I know
right.
By talking to people, listening to people, seeing what people are wearing, I knew if I gave them a place that they could buy it right here in our area, they don't have to go to Charlotte.
Was there competition? Are them other brands carried in other retailers nearby?
Yeah, a lot of the brands are zip code protected.
Okay. So when you sign the deal as a retailer with XYZ brand, they're not going to sign one with the guy next to you.
No, and if they already have someone,
they won't sign.
They won't sign with us. So you have that protection. It's not the biggest protection. And I used to really worry about that. I'm like, all right, what happens if this person in wherever, Rock Hill is selling it? But now, honestly, I don't care.
Are they price protected too? Do they set prices?
So they have MSRP pricing. Yeah. But the big thing people don't understand is when you're buying from other retailers, so you're buying wholesale for them, they set their wholesale price, which doesn't give you a ton of room to make a margin. So you really can't, cut under what they're selling it at retail for. Obviously their margin's a lot bigger, right? It costs them a lot less to make it. So that goes back to the whole boutique thing. I see people selling the same hats I sell at various events or online and stuff for $4 or $5 more than I'm selling for. I won't do that. I don't think it's right. I know where I need to be margin wise. I know where the retailers, the ones actually, it's their branded stuff, what they're paying, what they're selling it for. I understand their costs a lot less. But I see some, other companies out there that are just gouging people. We're not going to do that. And I've also been told that by a lot of people. So, for the type of stuff you guys have and the price point you guys have it at, they go, you guys are very fair with your customers. And that's all we want to be. I don't, we don't want to be known for someone that's just out there to make a buck. We're trying, this is a long-term goal for us.
Yeah. It's a brand.
It's a brand.
That goes back and saying that word might be meaningless to some people, but building the brand is the value. Yeah. It's not the products. That the brand itself takes you further than, in my minimum knowledge of it. You certainly know more about it, but so, were the products doing good?
Yeah,
they were doing good. Okay, so Wicked Cowboy hats came along. Wicked Cowboy logoed hats started. Your own product.
Just a logo on it. Nice.
How did those move?
They moved pretty well, obviously.
Because at the time, no one probably knew.
No one knew what it was, and I knew, all right, let's start with a dozen, 24 hats, and eventually they all sold, right? But like everything else, you said it's a risk. You got to pay up front for everything, right? So now I own all this inventory. I'm hoping people buy it. You want to give it away to some people so they wear it, but then again, you're not making money doing that. But I will say this, that some of our best customers since day one have been our best friends.
Okay.
And I've always said this to people. I said, your best customers should be your best friends.
Were they friends that became customers, or were they customers that became friends?
They're friends that became customers.
Okay.
And to this day, we crank out new designs and ideas all the time. And they're always the first ones buying them, and they've just, they call themselves our ambassadors, but it's not like we're giving them anything. Sometimes I try to give my friends things, and they're like, no, we're paying for it. So, that's, one key to starting a business I've always said is your best friends should be your best customers because they're your best friends. And I don't think a lot of people understand that.
So how did, so talk about where it went from there. The first product, your first SKU was a logoed hat.
Just a logoed hat.
What happened after that?
So we got through the holidays. Holidays were really,
This was December. This 2023.
2023, and the holidays is like a catch-22, right? Because you're gonna do really well, right? It's the holidays. But how well are you really doing? Because it's not really the best test. And then January, February came along, and it got slow. We were still doing well. And then I started thinking, all right, where are we going next with this? We're starting to get, brand recognition. People are starting to talk about us. You're starting to see people wearing our stuff, whether it's the branded stuff or just stuff they bought in the store. Right. And I'm like, all right, the next thing we want to do, and we had been to a few rodeos before, and I'd seen, kind of what goes on vendor wise. I said, this is our demographic. This is why we built this company. This is where we need to be. So I talked to Carly and I said, you know what? I said, next thing we need to look into is we got to go mobile. And I don't want to go mobile with just 3 folding tables, a couple of tablecloths and stuff just flying everywhere. I said, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. So January 24, we put an order in for the trailer, 8.5 by 16 trailer, 7-foot ceilings, long tongue on the trailer so we could put a generator on. I wanted to do it all right. And then we got the trailer back, we got the trailer finally, I say the end of March, maybe beginning of April. And we had about 3 weeks to turn it around, get it ready. Flooring, slat walls inside. We built a checkout counter. I'll show it to you after, but it's a full blown store on wheels.
How, not just the trailer, but all of your expenses to this point, was the business cash flowing, or were you having to put personal money in because you're still fairly new?
So we put only time we ever put money in was in the beginning.
Okay.
And then for the trailer.
Okay.
Since then, we haven't put any personal money in.
So the marketplace, I'm assuming you still have to pay a small monthly lease fee from them, and then do they keep a percentage?
They do not. So you pay.
Oh, okay.
You pay your rental fee, depending how big your space is in there, and then you pay a fee for the people that work there. They call it a bagging fee, and you pay that, and it's just one set cost every month. So I know what that cost is every month, and then it doesn't matter if we sell 15 pieces of of items or we sell 1,500. So the marketplace is honestly one of the best things that not enough people talk about, and it's starting to really get the recognition I think it deserves in this area.
All right, so fast forward, you got the trailer. We just talked about that. What happened then? Did you start hitting weekend events and start going hot and heavy when that got set up?
So we did the first Bucking K Rodeo in the spring last year. And then we did a bunch of other, we put on a car show called Cars and Cowboys. My friends, Real Steel Automotive in Gastonia. Some of my best friends, they said, let's put on a big car show. So we called it Cars and Cowboys. We did that. We did a lot of other pop-up events, some church events. We did a big event here in York. And in the fall, we did about 2 or 3 more rodeos. And, that was the extent of the trailer stuff.
How were those going? Were sales good? Were you selling out?
It's tiring. It's a lot. Like last weekend was a lot.
Because it's all on the weekends too. And you're working a full-time
And
job.
I'm working a full-time job. And a lot of this that you see here is nightly work.
Okay.
So our goal is really probably to do 8 to 10 rodeos weekends a year minimum, because one, there's a ton of people, right? So there's a lot of traffic, and two, that's our clientele, and we're there and we're building a brand where now we sponsor Matt Tolson. That's a rider in this area, up and coming rider. He's actually at the PBR in Greenville, South Carolina this weekend. And then we got another kid that runs GNCC dirt bikes. We sponsor him. So we're trying to build, that's our clientele. That's the market we want to be in. So we're probably going to do 8 to 10 this year. We're going to put on a couple car shows again, Cars and Cowboys. So we're trying to do more stuff with our trailer, and we're trying to hit different markets that we haven't been in.
So going back when you got the trailer and first started, you were hitting the rodeos, you were hitting the events. That was in late 2023, early 2024. How did 2024 go? Was it slow and steady through that? And then also, were you constantly putting out new of your own products?
Yeah. So we, let's say the first half of 2024, we focused a lot on the trailer, getting that ready to go. At the same time, our website had gone live. Okay. So we started selling on our website.
How did that come about? Just, it felt like a natural thing to do to start a site, or did you have somebody that led you into that? Or?
We get a lot of people that would come, so let's say mobile events, or would come in the store and then see something. And I said, well, we need another place for people to get it. And at the same time is believe it or not everybody lives in York, South Carolina, right?
Right.
So we have friends and people now. We have customers all across. We've shipped to Ireland, England. So you got the only way they can get it is the internet,
right?
If you're not on the internet nowadays, especially in our in what
product brand.
So we needed to be on the internet. So we started. My wife Carly started building the website. I'm not good at any of that stuff, right?
She had experience doing that though.
Yeah,
it came natural to her.
It's everything social media wise. Creating designs. That's all natural to her.
Okay.
That's completely unnatural to me.
She has a graphic design type background. I know you said communications, but like when it comes to physically making the designs, do you outsource that stuff and have to pay somebody, or does she make them?
She makes them all.
Okay.
Now she makes them all.
Yeah. And same with the website graphics, the social media stuff.
Social media. The only thing I do is the TikToks.
Okay.
I enjoy doing them.
Mm-hmm. Plug your TikTok.
Give me my card right there.
Yeah.
Some of the so TikTok would be Wicked Cowboy Co.
Yeah.
At Wicked Cowboy Co. Yeah.
We'll plug your other stuff later. But,
yeah.
So All right. So website started, social media, I'm assuming started around the same time.
Social media started before we opened the store. Yeah.
How did social media take off? Did you notice a pretty quick customer increase because of social media?
Not necessarily. I wouldn't say we're not at the point, and this is a conversation we just had, is all right, our next step, our next, I guess, say investment into the company is we got to, and we've already had conversations about this with various people, is all right, now how do we turn the internet stuff into a machine, right? Because right now the store, so, and we'll go back to the store real quick. We're in the same 10 by 10 space all the way up to October of last year.
Okay.
The same week we were moving into the 10 by 25 space, we ended up having our son. So just typical, just us fashion. It was like, all right, let's just move our store and also have a baby in the same week. So it was complete chaos. And so we moved into the store then. So the store now is at a point where it is, I don't want to call it a well-oiled machine, but it really is. We have customers that come in weekly. We have customers that, when they need something, they're going to Wicked Cowboy. And I've heard people say that they don't even know who I am. There's friends of ours that have kids in the high school and stuff, and they're like, "Where are you getting your hats and stuff?" And all of them are like, "Yeah, I go to Wicked Cowboy." I didn't even know that was there. And now they're coming in, and I'm stocking the shelves, and I'm coming back a day later, and 15 hats are gone.
How do you know when it's time for more product? Do you have to go check, or does the marketplace tell you, or do you?
No, we have to. We're friends with all the girls that work there. And they're all customers of ours too.
Okay. Yep.
But they'll text me. If a customer comes, has a problem or a question, I say, well, they don't have any more of these. They'll call me and they'll say, "You have any in your building?" I'll say, "Yeah, I can. I'll bring it down." Or they'll say, "Hey, a couple weeks ago, one of the girls, Reagan, just said to me, she goes, you might want to get down here tomorrow because your hat wall is looking a little scarce." I said, I was like, "Really?" I'm like, "It's just a regular weekend." And so, I went down there and, made sure those stocked back up. So that's the only kind of way we know.
How do you know? Okay, so at this point, though, you're doing more than just hats.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Shirts,
sweatshirts.
With the new designs that your wife's doing. How, at what point did you start doing stuff? But before, originally you placed your first order with a guy locally to embroider the hats for you. When did the transition come away from having someone else do that? And why?
So the trailer was the big thing in the beginning of last year. The first half of last year is like, all right, this trailer, right? The store's, kind of turnkey. It's kind of doing its thing. Website's slowly building up, but the website wasn't a main focus of ours to start, right? We wanted, in order to make the money, to keep investing the money, we need the store to be turning. We need product to be turning daily, weekly, because that's where we're going to make our money to start. And I knew the website would get to where we want to get it to. But then the trailer came and I was like, all right, we got to get the trailer going and stuff, the rodeos and stuff. Those are big money weekends for us. And it's also a chance for us to talk to a lot of people and for people to see the name on the side of the trailer and all that. And then about halfway through the year, we pretty much every week or 2 weeks, I was talking to my friend that has a company. And I would say, I need this. But he's also, he's a young kid. I don't want to say kid, young man too. And he's built his company from nothing. And he's a full-blown embroidery place. I mean, he's doing stuff for everybody. And he's a one-man show. So, as much as I want to say, hey, I need 24 hats next week, it's not fair to him. Right. He's got a business to run too. And he has customers that are paying a lot of money for stuff too. So, I started thinking, I said, all right, I have two problems now. One, I'm losing my house, not really losing my house, but I'm losing space in my house because my office has turned into just stuff everywhere. I got hat racks in here, it's just chaos. And I said, two, I says, all right, now we got to start thinking about, all right, we want to bring the stuff in house. Eventually if we get big enough, we're probably gonna have to outsource it again at a mega level. But for now, I says, I need to drop my cost. So I got to create, larger margins. And two, I got to be able to
have control.
And I also have to say, all right, if I come up with an idea, like we came up, if you look back there, like that Yappy Hour hat, right? Yappy Hour is, it's obviously a hat that women buy, right? Yappy Hour, it's catchy. all right, I want to make that hat. So I made, Carly came up with the idea of design. I said, all right, I'll digitize it. I said, but if we want to start doing stuff like that, I don't want to, I don't want to have to buy 12 of them to make it make sense and then hope they sell. I want to make one of them, maybe making 6, 7 different variations, different style hats or whatever. And I says, you just put it on the website, you put it in the store. Right. So we made that about a month ago, probably sold, I don't know, 15, 20 of them. And all I have to do is, if you look behind you, all I have to do is turn the machine on and make one. So it's like, all right, if we're going to do that, I need a machine.
You don't have a minimum order quantity at that point.
You don't.
You don't have to order a minimum, any product, e-commerce stuff, there's some things, the MOQ, minimum order quantity. Exactly. And that goes away when you're doing it yourself, especially, which leads into the next question. Your lead times on having to make stuff. Are you able to make to order? Or if some things, if you were making this table, you would not be able to make that to order and get it out the next day.
No, if we get
hat being embroidered with a nice machine, you're able to do that. But have you run into situations where you haven't been able to make to order and you're like, oh shoot, it's going to be 4 days because I'm just so backed up? Or what's your lead time? What's the slowest thing to make, fastest thing to make?
The slowest thing to make is if you get something. So we make for the Wicked Cowboy stuff, we make all our own stuff, right? The ideas and everything. And then we digitize it in the computer and then we put it in the machine and we make it. At the same time, when I got this machine, like when you walked in earlier, I'm making a hat for my buddy's renovation company. I only do stuff like that for friends and family. He's a great friend of mine. He wants hats for his business. So if they come to me and say, here's my logo and stuff, all right, that's going to take a couple of days to get digitized. And then I got to find time in my own schedule to do it. Whereas if we're sitting here right now and I get an order for a hat, I might, that hat rack looks pretty bare right now. It was a lot thicker last weekend for the rodeo. I might be able to just go pull it off that, put it in a box, print the label, ship it out. Or if I don't have it, I'll just put it in that machine 10 minutes later, print the label, it's in a box. So that's the quickest stuff. The stuff that takes me the longest is if I get an order for, say, let's say 30 hats, it's probably going to be, it's either going to be a long, long night or it's going to be a couple of days for me to piece together the time to do it, after work, on the weekend. How
has it been juggling a full-time job with this? You've kind of mentioned weekends and night work, but do you ever have, I guess, business 911s that happen while you're at work or not really? Or how do you juggle both?
Yeah. So the good thing, we're very fortunate that Carly, my wife now, is, she went from full-time to part-time in her job when we had Carter. So she has a lot more flexibility to do that stuff. But honestly, it's knock on wood. There's nothing that's happened so far that is, a 911 where we're like, oh shit, we got to drop everything to do it right now.
Right.
And that's probably because, we're not in the trade, business where we're not fixing people's pipes. And
that's right.
It'll
be fine. Yeah. It's a commodity.
It's commodity. Like, all right, so someone gets a hat or the hat gets lost in the mail. All right. We'll just grab another one, ship it out, right? It's not like I just went and fixed someone's plumbing and then they wake up at 2 a.m. and they got water going through their
And
bathroom.
I'm also assuming you don't have a business main line that's ringing 45 times a minute to your cell phone.
No, so my old cards, not the one I just gave you, the old one used to have my cell phone on it. The worst idea I've ever had in my life.
Yeah.
Because we would hand them out. And mostly you hand it out so people would see the social media and the website and stuff on it, but my phone number was on that. And I think some people get a little too comfortable with that. And they don't understand that, like, listen, people have lives, they have things going on and stuff like that.
Yeah, you're still a person.
Yeah, you're still a human being. And, maybe some of the wrong people got that number. So I took that off that. So, yeah, we really haven't had any, 911s like that. And go back to last weekend. Friday night, we sold a ton of our Put It On the Cowboys tab hats. Ton of people love them. And that's another Carly idea. And Saturday morning, I came out here and I made about 15 more. And then we went back to the rodeo Saturday afternoon. So I have the luxury of being able to do that.
So with all the new designs, all the new products, is it just hats and shirts at this point?
Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, it's hats, shirts, sweaters, sweatshirts.
Okay. Is all
on
of
the
it
men's
embroidered or is there some screen printed?
There's screen printed too.
Do you do that in-house now?
Yeah, it's the machine right behind you. Yeah.
So, how, with the screen printing and the embroidery, how did you learn how to do that? Run the machines, know what to do. I mean, it's one thing to understand you were buying embroidered hats, so you understand the concept of it, but running the machines, setting up the machines, the files, the threads, how did you learn how to do that stuff?
Just a lot of trial and error, a lot of nights out here screaming at the machine, a lot of YouTube videos, a lot of calling. So when I bought that embroidery machine, I'll give them a plug. It's a Happy Japan machine, right? Japanese company. Their U.S. headquarters, their distributors in Charlotte. So I'd called around and looked at a couple different companies. It came down to two different companies. And when I called them and I reached out to them, they invited me in-house. They're going to show me everything. They're going to run things through the machine, talk about the business, whatever. And I went there and met with them. And Renee, who's kind of head of their marketing and their technical, and then Taro, who's their sales manager, they treated me like I was a family. And I said, deal.
Yep.
Right. And then once I got the machine, they've been nothing but helpful. Renee came out here and we did some cross branding stuff. He did videos for their social media pages of a brand using their machines and stuff. So he kind of gave me the 101 on what to do. And then for about a month and a half after that, it was just me out here by myself, and I screwed up a lot.
Yeah.
My friend that owns David, who owns the Top Hat Embroidery, he gave me a bunch of hats at really cheap. He says, I'll never use these. Just here, have them because you're gonna need them. And he wasn't kidding.
For practice.
And I screwed up a lot, and I would screw up, and then I got to a point where I was screwing up, but the normal person could never tell. And I was like, those little things bother me. Like if something's off by just a little bit, I have a hard time giving it to somebody. Mm-hmm. And then now it's kind of, knock on wood, now it's at a point where I don't want to say it's second nature, but like when you came in.
Very few mess ups.
When you came in just now,
yep.
And you probably have no idea what this is, the thread in the bobbin had run out. Mm. And I was like 90% done with that hat. So you got to cut the thread, take the hat off, change the bobbin, put a new thread bobbin in, put the hat back in, and then figure out, the hat should go back in the same spot. You have to go back a couple stitches, make sure that there's no white showing or the thread showing and all that stuff. And I did it without thinking. Mm. If this was like 4 or 5 months ago, I would have no idea what I was doing.
Right.
But it's just, I kept doing it over and over again.
Same with screen printing? Just learn as you go, kind of learn how to.
Yeah, so we have a DTG machine, which is like a big, it's like a big printer. That's
so it's not squeegee.
No, it's not screen printing. It's direct to garment.
Okay.
I originally was going to get into screen printing, but the space you need, the black room and all that was just a little too much. So that is way more. I don't want to say it's easy by any means, but if I went from that to the embroidery machine, it would have been a way bigger step than going from the embroidery machine to that. That's a lot more,
simpler.
Yeah, it's definitely simpler between the files in your computer and kind of how that machine works. There's more prep that goes on with that. You got to prep the shirts, all those things. You got to have a heat press and all that. So there's definitely more labor time, I guess you could say, than an embroidery machine. But the embroidery machine is definitely more finicky. You have to massage it a little bit more.
Once you started bringing everything in house, did you have to go out and find a supplier where you could buy blank hats from?
Yeah, so we buy from. There's a couple of like our Otto hats, which a lot of women wear. We buy direct from Otto. Mm. I'm working on Richardson to buy direct from Richardson, so I go through a distributor now. Like our polos, things like that, I buy through a distributor now.
Yeah.
And then. But yeah, I like to get it where, a lot of the big brands that we sell, if you look inside their hat, where normally it would say Richardson 112 or whatever, it just says their brand, and it has their name branded on the stitching. So I know what kind of hat it is, right? But if you just open their, looked inside their hat, you wouldn't see Richardson, you wouldn't see Otto, you wouldn't see any of the actual manufacturer's names in there.
Whenever, so the whole purpose in bringing it in-house was the control, but also better margins for you. Did you see that pretty quick, or was there anything that you were like, oh shoot, I can't get these shirts as cheap as I thought I could? Like, was there any problems with that financially, or that was good, better margins for you? When you brought it in-house?
I had signed up prior to us buying anything because we have, with our licenses and stuff, I have the ability to buy it. You know what I mean? I could have bought blank stuff and try to take it somewhere. It's like going to a repair shop, or like, is the mechanic really going to want to fix your car if you're bringing the parts in? No, because all they're going to be able to charge you is labor. They're not going to be able to upcharge you on the parts. So obviously a lot of embroidery companies aren't going to want people bringing in parts, right? So, but I had known how much things cost. I had done my research on it. So I kind of had an idea where the margins were going to be. So I already had that in my head. But the biggest thing in my head was, all right, now we're going to be able to make one. If we have an idea, we're going to be able to make one of it and then put it out there everywhere. TikTok, Facebook, Instagram.
You're not having to buy 12, going back to the
you don't have to, and the cost is a lot higher when you're doing that, right? Because the embroidery place has to buy the hat. Then they got to add their upcharge to it. And then they got to add their charge for how much it's going to cost to put something on it. So all that stuff's out the window. I'm just buying the plain hat now, and I get to keep everything.
Buying these machines, did the business cash flow to buy those, or was that a personal investment you had to do up front?
No, the business has done everything.
It's been able to make it work.
Yeah, the business has done
internally, staying within the business.
Everything stayed in the business. This is like we talked about in the beginning of this is a long-term game for us. This isn't flipping a house.
Yep.
Right. So, for me, with my full-time job, with everything we got going on, I said the business, we invest back in the business. We don't take anything away from the business because all that does, it impedes the growth of the business. So everything we've done with the business has gone back into the business, the machines, the trailer, you name it. So the business is running itself in that sense.
You started the website. How long until you got the first order? And did you have to market that up front, or did people automatically start finding it just because they started to get another brand? Or initially when you started the site, how long before the site started to get in steady traffic?
It probably took 4 or 5 months.
Okay.
You get an order here or there. Sometimes you get a couple orders, especially when you drop something new. All right. And then at our mobile events and things like that, we're trying to push people to the website. Trying to incentivize people to the website. And then the other good thing about our website is, our platform Shopify. So I don't know if you heard the Shop app. The Shop app's great because you get cash back. You get cash back to spend money. Like I bought a Dick Trickle t-shirt and my wife bought an Earnhardt shirt from all the cash back money we got on it. But when people go on the Shop app now, you see Wicked Cowboy on there. So, and then we can track it on our website where these people come from. Some people come from TikTok. Some people order through our TikTok shop. Some people come through Shop app. Some come directly from Google. They might type in, Cowboys hat. And then next thing you know, put on my Cowboys tap hat pops up and they get driven that way.
How did did your wife know how to do SEO and all that?
She does. She knows a lot about that. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier is now we're at the point now where we're taking a look at, all right, what kind of ads and stuff are we going to do? How are we going to spend money on the internet?
Up to this point, you have not done paid advertising?
Not 1 cent. Nope.
Wow.
Not 1 cent.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Legit. That's
Yeah, not 1 cent. Everything's been organic.
But you're looking at now.
Well, now it's at
where to maybe start spending some advertising.
Yeah, now it's at the point where we've moved into. We're on a website called Fair, which is a big wholesale website. We're a retailer on there, so we're a wholesaler on there where we're buying product to sell in the store. We're doing less and less of that now, obviously, as we've gone in-house and also as we've built relationships with these other retailers that we're direct with. But now we're also a retailer on there where people are buying from other companies are buying from us to sell our product in their stores. So now that we have that, now I said, all right, now we're not just going to, from a storefront level, we're not just only going to be in York, South Carolina. We've done one store we're in now is in Lubbock, Texas. You know,
And they found you online.
they found us through Fair. They placed an order and I shipped it to them. So, you know, and that's so, all right. So now if we're going to be on shelves in other places, so now you're going to see, now people are going to see it in person and be like, what the heck is Wicked Cowboy? All right. So now we need to make sure on the internet, we have a presence. And we're popping up on people's Instagrams and saying, you should follow this company. This is all the stuff they're doing. So now we're starting to take a look at that and see what that looks like.
But no paid stuff still?
No
You're not
paid.
doing Google ads, Facebook ads?
No, we haven't done any of that. No.
Is the goal to do that?
So we're,
Or I guess you might not be able to answer that. It might depend on how you.
so I have, I have a close friend of mine that's what he's done his whole life. Worked for some big agency and stuff. Now he's a privateer, I guess you could say. You know, he's doing it himself. And he has a lot of successful clients. So he's put together something, different phases and things that we're taking a look at. And we're going to see, all right, where do we want to start doing this? And we look at there's analytics with everything, right? They're never going to promise you if you spend X amount of money, you're a revenue X amount of money, right? They give you a broad range.
Yes.
So, and I'm a very analytical person. Like I like to see where things are going. So we're trying to figure out, all right, where's the best area to start? And then the other thing we have to start thinking about is, all right, we have the embroidery. We have one single head 15 needle embroidery machine, which is great. It's great when you got to make 10 hats. What happens if we start getting orders for 50, 100, 150? You know, it's not sustainable. So then now we have to start thinking outside the box. All right, if we have to go, to like a lot of these big companies out there, they don't make any of their own stuff.
That's right.
It's all their own ideas. It's all their logo. It's all their design.
Their branded stuff.
Their branded stuff. But when you're on their TikTok live or something in their warehouse and they got all their stuff behind them, it's all in plastic sleeves for a reason, because that's how it came from their manufacturer, right? So that's the end goal, obviously. So I got to figure out, all right, if we do this stuff, what happens? Crossing fingers, when it does happen and we do pop off, can we keep up? Because you don't want to come out here all this great stuff and then you get all the orders and stuff and you don't have the capability to fulfill it, and people are like, where's my stuff?
How is the goal for you to go full time with this?
So the goal,
and could you have already? Was there a reason why you didn't already?
No, I couldn't go just because of what I've done in my career for my full time. It's probably not the smartest decision for me right now. For her, it is absolutely, and we're very close to that happening, which will be good because, and I tell her this all the time, I don't have a problem working. I don't have no problem coming out here. I enjoy coming out here. Turn the music on. Right, and we're beautiful farmland. Right? I don't have a problem coming out here at night and just cranking out stuff and making stuff look good, and I enjoy doing that. I says my hardest thing I got to deal with is the emails, the ordering, the making sure that we're signed up for certain events, or if we're going to start doing apparel shows where we're going to present our stuff. That takes a lot of time, and it's a lot of tedious work. And that's where she's really good at that stuff. Social media posts, scheduling posts. I don't even know how to schedule a post on Instagram. Apparently you could do that. She knows how to do all that stuff. But yeah, the end goal is one day is like, I think a lot of people go to work every day and they say, I wish I didn't have to answer to anyone. Absolutely. So I hope sometime in the future, I got to make that decision. I got to sit down and say,
and it might be a way for you to be able to separate work and life too. I mean, because right now, especially if you ever have more kids and stuff like that, you might not want to be out here till 11 o'clock at night every night.
Yeah. Or, the other thing is, at the end of the day, we're building this not only for ourselves, right?
Long term.
This is long term. This is, if our kids can grow up one day, and and people are always like, oh, well, you just go work for your dad or your mommy's company, right? Oh, you had it made for you. You know what? If that's the biggest complaint someone could say about my kid one day, then I think we did a damn good job.
Have you transitioned? Have you already passed the threshold of Wicked Cowboy branded items are more than the big vendors you were selling?
No, we're not.
Or are they still a big part?
No, we're not there yet because. And I don't, in our retail space, our store, I'll never get out of the other brands. One, because we're not a hunt and fishing brand. There's a million hunting fishing brands. If you go on TikTok now or whatever, everyone starts one, right? That's what everybody's doing. There's all these different waterfowl companies, and a lot of them have nice stuff. Good for them. They're all doing really well. But that's a big part of this. That's a big part of everywhere in America. I feel like you hunt and fish in every state in this country. So we have a lot of customers that's what they like. So I'm not going to take that away from them. Where I would like to get it is, and not to get ahead of ourselves or give away secrets, but there's some designs we have now that are going to be like maybe a little bit of a crossover of both, right? So maybe a hunt and fishing theme something with a cowboy or something like that. Or bull, or who knows what it might be, right? Maybe it's a bull fishing. I don't know. Something that kind of crosses over a little bit. So I'll get into more of that stuff. So I'll never take that away from the retail space, but our e-commerce and what we're selling to other retailers, that's always going to be, the website's about 75% Wicked Cowboy now, 25% some of our others. Eventually, all that's going to be only Wicked Cowboy branded stuff.
For the website.
For the website, obviously our wholesale, TikTok already is. That stuff's just going to be branded because those people that are buying on that stuff are from all around the world, and they're coming to our brand because that's what they identify with. Whereas in our store, there's some people that come in that couldn't care less about the rodeo or care less about cowboy life. They just want to go fishing or hunting. So I want to make sure they have something stuff they can buy.
Yeah. So you've kind of talked about it. We've talked about it in bits and pieces, but do you have like here's the 5-year plan for this company? Is there like one major milestone you're striving to hit, or is it just kind of steady growth?
Well, I mean, we're a little bit a year and a half in, and if you told me we would have done all this already, I would have said this is like 3-5 years from now.
Yeah.
So it's hard to tell, but no, I mean, yeah, I guess in 3 years, I say another year and a half from now, I want to be at least double what we are. And then 5 years, I'd say, I don't know if it's realistic, but it's hopeful. And within 5 years, I like to have that conversation with my family, being like, all right, maybe it's time for all of us to do this. You know what I mean? Maybe that happens at the 3-year mark. Who knows?
And you want to keep. We talked about a minute ago how like outsourcing the big production stuff, if you get to that point, is that the goal, or do you want to still keep it in house and just hire a bunch of employees, bigger space, but keep it all in house?
I haven't looked into it cost wise. If I had to take a educated guess, I'm probably going to say that outsourcing it is probably going to be the way to go. Just pure volume and not having the overhead of employees. Having to go get a big space, machinery, all those things. But as long as we're a company, we're going to have our own machines in house too. We're always going to be making stuff. Just from and I think a good idea, a good way of doing it is as we come up with ideas and stuff, we could always make one, right? And if that one turns into a hat that's selling thousands a year, then we'll go source it somewhere. And then have it that way. But we're always going to have our own machines too to do our own things, especially locally.
Are there any plans or aspirations, I guess, to sell more than just hats and apparel? Like, do you want to get into leather, like belts, wallets? Do you want to is there other things?
Yeah. So I've already started playing around. I want to get into, accessories too, lanyards, all those things, things like that. And then into wallets. I like to get into belt buckles at some point. But that's an area that I've been looking into for a while now. And there's a big difference between, what a real belt buckle is supposed to be and just selling a $25 one. Right. I just don't want to be cheap. And my wife, we've started to take a look at jewelry as well. So there's a lot of different things we want to do, but I want to just I don't know if master is the right word, but we want to really succeed at something before we move on to something else.
Have you had any issues with people trying to copy your designs?
Yeah, we get people, I'm not going to say all the time, but I've had people come in the trailer and stuff. And, I had one lady last year come in the trailer and just start videoing everything. And I'm not talking about like videoing she was videoing the apparel, but she wasn't videoing how we built the trailer inside. And I finally said, can I help you? You looking at anything? And she's like, no, we're just thinking about doing this too, blah, blah. And I don't have a problem with people come in and ask questions. Like, how'd you build this? Why'd you build this? Like, I'll be as nice and cordial as possible. But you come in, you start doing these things, and then I ask you, and then you tell me why. It's not what that's not how I would do it. But yeah, we've had people come, ask, that I've seen, and then next thing you know, I see online, all right, that's pretty similar to what we're doing, or maybe the social media stuff's kind of similar. And listen, we're not doing anything innovative either. You know what I mean? You're not. Right. You're not.
But your designs, though, if your wife's coming up with it from her own brain creatively,
yeah. But and
sayings or fonts, just intellectual, I guess, property or whatever that becomes.
So you know what? I don't see as much of our stuff. I see some of these other companies, and you see, you're forced to be on TikTok a lot in our market and what we do, because TikTok drives a lot, especially since COVID. And you see these other like companies doing stuff like we buy from certain top brands, and then I'm like, you're literally copying word for word what they came up with, right? And a lot of times they're not coming up on anything crazy, but they came up with a thought in their head or a lyric or whatever it may be, and they put it on a hat and they sold a lot of it. And then now you're literally putting the same thing on yours, acting like it's you came up with it or you did it. So we will. And someone asked us, "Do you have?" Last year, towards the end of last year, they said, "You don't have any more of these hats." I said, "No, I don't." They go, "Well, why don't you just make it?" I said, "Because I didn't come up with that."
Right. Yeah.
I'm not just gonna put it on a hat now that I can and say, I don't know. That's kind of how maybe it could be wrong because I know everyone else is doing it. But that's not how we're going to do it.
You've never had somebody copy you to the point there where you've had to like go after them and tell them they need to take it down or anything like that?
No, not yet, at least, no.
What about the other way around? Have you had anybody reach out to you and try to claim that you copied one of their designs?
No, we've never done that. The only time I've ever had an issue or anything was on TikTok Shop because hopefully the Chinese aren't listening. I don't know if they own it anymore, but our inventory, what goes on my TikTok shop comes out of my Shopify programming, cataloging. But you have to, and I was just getting started. In our TikTok shop, I only want Wicked Cowboy stuff because that's our brand. I'm not outfitters. And I guess two of the items that wasn't supposed to get transferred over got transferred over, and then TikTok right away is like, this copyright infringement. So they were protecting the brand, and I was like, yeah, you're right. I said, but I didn't mean to do that. So I made sure they were off there. That's the only time I ran into an issue. And I'm like, well, I don't even want their stuff. I don't want people buying other brands. They need to be buying, if they're going to buy anything, they're going to buy a Wicked Cowboy brand and stuff.
You want to plug your social media, your website, where people can find you, events, whatever?
Yeah, I got to look at this card.
Yeah.
Website's wickedcowboyandco.com. TikTok's Wicked Cowboy Co. Instagram's Wicked Cowboy Co. And then Facebook is Wicked Cowboy and Co.
Anything else you want to talk about or add, man? Appreciate you doing this.
No,
good to go. No. Any advice for people? I mean, in the e-commerce world, or any, biggest regret or anything crazy, bad stories, anything that could prevent somebody from making a mistake if they're trying to start their own business?
No, I mean, I would just look at what you want to do. And just, I always tell people, do what you want to do, but prepare yourself for it. We came up when we came up with the idea to do this and stuff. It wasn't like we just said, all right, let's just do it. We had been talking about it for a long, and I'm not necessarily saying you have to do that. But I felt like we both understood what we were getting into because we were a consumer of it. And I would, it's just like, if you like grading, and you want to do grading for the rest of your life, I probably wouldn't just go buy a skid steer with no experience and never done it before and start a business, right?
Do some homework.
You might do some homework and maybe go work on the job for a while. And like a lot of these grading companies, right? A lot of these guys, they all work for somebody at one point, and then they started doing it on the side. They do it at nights, they did it on the weekends, and then it turned into their full-time gig. But they mastered working the machine. They mastered the dirt. They understood how it worked.
Had this same conversation with everybody else that I've recorded with so far. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Don't go out here buying and jumping in. Not even buying, forget the money. I mean, even don't go in full feet first or head first and you have no idea what you're doing. Be prepared, to your point.
Yeah.
I mean,
And the last thing I will say, and we get this asked a lot, people are like, I like what you guys are doing. How can we get involved? Do it your way. If you can't do it in the beginning by yourself, maybe wait. Maybe figure out a way how you can do it. Maybe scale it back a little bit. But the minute you bring in someone from the outside, whether it's family, friends, strangers, you never have complete control of it. So at the end of the day, the only people making a decision on the future and where we've been is myself and Carly, my wife. And, you know, I tell people all the time, there'll never be a third person in there. And I says, and that's just how it's going to be. And just because I don't want to say I'm a control freak, but the minute you give up any part of it,
it's your baby too.
Yeah, it is.
It is there. Yeah.
The minute you give up any part of it, it's never fully yours anymore. So, and listen, it's a lot harder. It's a lot easier said than done. But you know, the only advice I give people is if you really want to do it, figure out a way to do it. But make sure it's something that's sustainable for you, at least in the beginning.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it, man. If you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe. And if you're listening to this on your podcast player, leave it a 5-star review. Thanks, dude.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.